I've heard them called testimonies. But a lot of times when people think of testimonies, they think only of their salvation story. We're going to start with that, but we're going to expand beyond that. So I want you, one of the things that people just did by nature, it was the culture. Let me tell you about Jesus and all the difference he made in my life. Because they were experiencing Jesus all the time, and they were just telling stories, and that was one of the ways that the life that was in them was expressed. And so I want to show you how you can do this and just make it very comfortable for yourself. The kingdom advanced simply by people encountering Jesus and sharing the story of their encounter with Jesus, period. So it doesn't matter how long you've been a Christian or how short you've been a Christian. Jesus is ready to use you. You have something to say. In Luke chapter 8, verses 38 to 39, the demoniac that Jesus set free, it says, the man from whom demons had gone out begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away and said, return to your home and declare how much God has done for you. And he went away proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him. So he was demon possessed that morning, and that afternoon Jesus said, no, you don't come with me. This city needs you. Just go tell them what good things God's done for you. Do you know that Jesus is ready to use you, and you have something to say? You are an expert witness when it comes to sharing your Jesus stories. How has Jesus made a difference in your life? You're an expert, and you have something to say. And there's people that you can reach that Jesus couldn't. This demoniac, he was the best person for the job because the townspeople asked Jesus to leave. So there are people that are connected with you that would receive the testimony about the kingdom from you that other people will not be able to reach. So that's just the way it is. In John chapter 4, verse 28 and 30, the woman at the well, it says, so the woman left her water jar and went away into the town and said to the people, come and see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ? And they went out of that town and were coming to him. So here's a lady who just had this brief encounter with Jesus, and all of a sudden the kingdom message is spreading and other people are coming. So what we're going to work on a little bit today is sharing your Jesus stories. And so some of you may have done this before and worked on this a little bit. So this is often how I'll share a testimony, just when I'm out and about. And I'll say, you know what, I found that for me, I had this tremendous passion to live and to succeed, and the problem is that I was succeeding at everything that I was trying to do, but I was just completely empty inside. And I kept feeling like I did when we won the state championship when I was in my junior year of high school. I remember we were coming back on the bus, and we were like, ooh, 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 just all excited, and stuff. We went 15-0. I was voted the permanent team captain on that team as a junior, which is pretty unusual, So I had a lot of respect and esteem and everything, but I just remember this feeling coming over me. I have to come back and do this all again next year. And so it was like my whole life started feeling that way. I had all my friends and had everything going the right direction, but I didn't feel connected with God. I was like, what's the whole point of life? And I remember coming back to my dorm room one night and just saying, God, what's the whole point? Because for me, I dropped church because church was boring. But I couldn't drop God. And I was like, what's the point? And I wasn't expecting this, but some verses came back to mind. What good is it for somebody if they gain the whole world and lose their soul? And I realized that's exactly what I was doing. I was winning the world, but the insides, I wasn't connected with God. I was lost on the inside. And then I was like, so what? And he said, whoever tries to save his life will lose it. I was like, oh, because I was thinking, maybe I need to try harder. He's like, no, if you try to save your life, you'll lose it. That's what religion is. But if you lose your life for me in the gospel, you'll find it. And boy, it was at that point I was just like, yeah, that's it. I was like, yes, that's all I did. And all of a sudden, my life really changed. God became real to me. I don't know how, but I just knew he had come into my life. I remember sitting up in my bed that night. I was like, woo! You know, I was like, nobody was there, but I just knew everything had changed. The next day, I asked for a Bible, and I started reading it. It was like all of a sudden, it was like I could sense the reality that was in the words. It was like God was there, and from that point on, it's like now I have life. I have happiness. I have peace. I have joy because I have God in me. And so now, instead of trying to succeed to get life, I've got life, and that is success. And so now I can bring that to everybody else. And so I just find, instead of walking around empty trying to fill the emptiness, I walk around full, and I can bless other people. And it's made such a difference in my marriage. It's made a difference in my own outlook on everything. And do you know how Jesus could do this for you too? So that's kind of how I share, just real briefly. But notice, you don't have to talk about all of the dirt and the stuff, you know, like I was doing this, you know, you're going to make people blush. You don't have to. You can say, no, I was involved in all kinds of stuff, immorality, if you want to say stuff like that. I was involved in all kinds of stuff, drugs, you know, you name it. I was in it, and it was a mess. You don't know it, but you get the idea. My life was a mess. And before, there might be 100 things. You know, I could talk about drugs. I could talk about sex. I could talk about a lot of different things in my before. I could talk about dead religion. But what I'm going to bring out is that thing that probably most connects with the person that I'm talking to. Or, hey, you might be at the place where I grew up, and as a child, my parents were Christian, and I grew up hearing about Jesus, but I got to tell you, he's made such a difference in my life. Tina grew up in a Christian home, and so I'm going to let her share her testimony, because her testimony is very different than mine, just kind of as an example, because a lot of the questions I was getting on the break were from people who grew up and have known Christ their entire conscious life, basically. So,
yeah. Okay. Like Andy said, sometimes there's a bridge. So, for example, if someone was really maybe feeling anxious a lot, like, you know, I'm always uptight. I'm always feeling anxious. I'm always worried about something. This would probably be my hook in. Is that, you know, something, even as a young child, I wanted to know about God, and who is this, and I want to be with Him. I had this thing in me that knew that there was more than just playing with my Barbies. Like there's something I want to know about God, and I don't want to miss out. And so I talked one night at dinner with my dad, and he explained to me that because of sin in my life, that I was actually separated from God, and that some of that anxiety and that worry is there because I am separated from Him. But that because He loved the world so much, He gave Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ died on the cross to cover my sins, to pay for those sins, so that I could have a relationship with God and not be left out. And so all I needed to do, though, was to recognize that and to ask Jesus to forgive me and to come and live in my life, because I wanted to have a relationship with God. And that when I did that, He would receive me, and I would have a relationship with Him. And so I did that, and I remember I was like crying and excited, happy at the same time, because I was so relieved. This peace and this relief washed over me, because even as a child, I thought that I had to meet certain standards or do these certain things to please God or to try to have a relationship with Him. And when I found out that it was as simple as just believing in Jesus, like that's all He asked, was just put my trust in Him. That was it. That was just overwhelming. And when I did experience that peace. And so you don't have, the scriptures say you don't have to be anxious about anything, because He cares for you, and He cared so much for you that He gave His only Son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross. So would you like to experience this peace? So with a relationship with God, that might be a way to do it.
That's great. And so hopefully that kind of gives a little bit of an example in a way that would help someone who might have had more of an experience like Tina growing up and coming to know Christ at a very young age. But for those of you that were that came to know Christ at a young age, you're not going to have so much of an experience of Christ coming into your life, but you're going to have the experience of Christ in your life. So it's not necessarily coming in, but the difference he makes because he's in. And so you can really speak about that. You could, kind of a little outline is before or without, then how did you come to realize? What turned the lights on for you? All right? How did you discover that Jesus was the answer? And then the difference that Jesus makes. That's the real point of a testimony, the difference Jesus makes. Okay? The discovery point, that's the place where you want to draw out that one truth or maybe two that turn the lights on for you that you feel like your friend can relate to, that you're talking about. Because what I really want to do is I want to tell my story of the difference that Jesus has made. Okay? So you notice how I talked at the beginning about feeling empty, in the end I talked about feeling fulfilled. Right? So you find your thing, struggling with just feeling like, or whatever your thing it might be, or you feel like your friend is. So there's a little bit of before, a little bit about how you came to discover the reality of Jesus, that he's real, what he can do for you, and then the difference that he's made since. And what you want to try to do at the beginning is to scale it down. You want to be able to share it 3 to 5 minutes. And then if you're in a conversation and you don't have a long time, you're out on the streets with a stranger, that's about all they're going to give you. Right? So if you can share it briefly and to the point, then you got a powerful tool. And then you can use that same framework. So if you're sitting down over coffee, and you've got an hour to really share your story, then you can do the Alcoholics Anonymous version. Hi, Andy.